We are experiencing the greatest technological and economic shift in human history. We need a way to help millions of Americans transition through this period, and a universal basic income is the best and most efficient way to do that. Hello, I'm Andrew Yang, and I'm running for president as a Democrat in 2020. I believe I have the right vision, priorities, and values to improve the lives of millions of Americans. 7 years ago, I started Venture for America to train hundreds of young entrepreneurs to build businesses in Detroit, Cleveland, Baltimore, and other communities across the country. Together, we helped create thousands of jobs. But during this time, I came to realize that technology has already wiped out 4 million manufacturing jobs in Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and other states. And it's about to do the same thing to people who work in retail, food service and food prep, customer service, transportation, as well as industries like insurance, accounting, medicine, and law. I saw so much over the last number of years traveling this country. What I experienced was an eye-opener to me, where I would walk through abandoned neighborhoods and boarded up businesses. I have 2 young boys, and I'm deeply concerned about the future that they're going to grow up in. If we don't change things dramatically, they're going to grow up in a country with fewer and fewer opportunities, and a handful of companies and individuals reaping the gains from new technologies, while the rest of us struggle to find opportunities and eventually lose our jobs. And it doesn't need to be that way. Under my plan, every American adult will receive $1,000 a month, free and clear, paid for by a new tax on the companies that are benefiting most from automation. If we provide a universal basic income, Americans will be able to go back to school, move for a new opportunity, start their own business, and really have their head up as they plan for the future. With your help, we can make universal basic income a reality. Join us and let's build a new kind of economy, one that puts people first.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to Simulation. What a cool video that we just watched. We have an amazing episode for you. We're going to be talking about universal basic income, aka the freedom dividend. We're going to be talking about putting humanity first over the markets. Our guest today is Andrew Yang. Andrew, thank you for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me, Al. It's a pleasure to be here.
Andrew, you are a presidential candidate. We'll get a little handshake. You got a presidential candidate for 2020, Democrat.
Yes.
You are an author of The War on Normal People.
Yep.
Which is actually a fantastic book. I really recommend going and reading that book. You're also the founder of Venture for America. Over the last 7 years now, you guys have been working on. Teach us about Venture for America. Teach us about the last 7 years. Teach us about everything that's going on, man, because this is the most important moment in humanity's kind of coming up in these next couple of decades.
I agree.
Yeah, and let's unpack this.
Yeah, so I started Venture for America in 2011 to help train young entrepreneurs to start companies and create jobs in Detroit, New Orleans, Baltimore, Cleveland, Birmingham, and other cities around the country, because I had the sense that that we had too much talent getting concentrated on Wall Street and in Silicon Valley, and not enough creating new enterprises around the country. And what I learned during that period was that we're automating away many, many more jobs than entrepreneurs are going to create in Michigan, Ohio, Missouri, and on. It's like we were pouring water into a bathtub that has a giant hole ripped in the bottom. And so then you say, okay, like what the heck do you do about the hole in the bathtub? And Donald Trump getting elected in 2016 was a giant signal to me, where things have gotten so bad with the decimation of manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, which were the swing states he needed to win. We automated away 4 million jobs in those states.
Automated away 4 million jobs in those states.
Yeah, between 2000 and 2015, we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in those states and around the country. And if you look at the voter district data, there's a direct correlation between the number of industrial robots in a district and then the movement toward Trump. So this is all a giant automation and economic shift story. And for whatever reason, it's like our media is out to lunch on it, where they talk, it's like, oh, why did Trump win? Like, the reason he won is that we've automated away millions of manufacturing jobs, and we're here in Silicon Valley right now. My friends here know we're about to do the same thing to workers in retail, truck driving, call centers, fast food, and on throughout the economy. So yeah, I mean, it is like you said, this is the moment for humanity to come together and start owning what's happening.
Okay, you just listed the industries, call centers, retail, food service, manufacturing, these driving, truck driving, all these industries are 50% of these jobs, 50% of jobs are in those categories, and they will be automated by 2030.
Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. And yeah, those 5 job categories do comprise 49% of American jobs, getting paid about $15 an hour. Retail workers get paid about $12 an hour. Call center workers, $14 or $15 an hour. And these jobs are going to disappear very, very quickly.
The most important times are ahead of us, and you have a plan for
Yes.
the most important times ahead of us. Yeah.
Well, so as soon as I started digging into these numbers, I kept getting hit by this policy that's meant to be the countermeasure to automation, universal basic income. And one of the books that I read that really influenced me was a book by a guy named Andy Stern, who used to run the largest labor union in the country, the SEIU. And so a labor guy, the biggest labor union leader of his generation, said, the future of labor is no labor. We are screwed, and we need to move to universal basic income. So I found that very compelling, because it's not just some technologist in some lab being like, oh, we're going to automate away all the jobs. The labor guy says, yes, we're going to automate away all the jobs. So I had lunch with Andy Stern in 2017, talking about his plan, which was to give every American.
Just say this is a slow automation, as in for there being no labor whatsoever. It'll be a slow process to get to no labor, but a lot of these repetitive tasks, manually repetitive, cognitively repetitive, they're right in the crosshairs of software.
Yes, yeah. So it's totally the case that we'll have jobs with us for a long, long time. And as you're suggesting, according to the Fed, about 44% of jobs are either repetitive manual or repetitive cognitive. But again, if you look at retail, manufacturing, truck driving, et cetera, I mean, truck driving alone, the most common job in 29 states, 3.5 million truck drivers, 94% male, average age 49, average education high school or 1 year of college, and then another 5 million workers who work in truck stops, motels, and diners that serve them as they crisscross the country every day. So
it's like 8 million jobs.
Yeah, it's like 8 million jobs, and it is, it's a real path to the middle class for millions of low educated, low skill Americans. And so you don't need to get rid of all the jobs to have massive problems. I mean, even the Great Depression, you had unemployment levels of 25%. But as we're sitting here today, our labor force participation rate has dropped to 62.7%, which is a multi-decade low and the same levels as El Salvador and the Dominican Republic. Almost 1 out of 5 working age American men of prime working age, 21 to 30, have not worked in the last 12 months. The underemployment rate for recent college graduates.
Okay, let's slow down. So 20% of working age males haven't done a full-time job in the last year?
Yeah, it's 18%. It's almost 1 out of 5. That's right.
And what was the labor force? 63%?
It's 62.7% is the current labor force participation rate. Also a multi-decade low.
That does not count for part-time work. That's only full-time work. Full-time, 62% of people are employed full-time.
Yeah, that's right. Which is a multi-decade low. It's much lower than the norm.
It's usually like 70%?
Well, it's not quite that high. It has historically crept up to that high. So what happened was over history, you had a labor force participation rate that was a bit lower. Though again, where we are right now is a multi-decade low. Women entered the workforce post-World War II, and then the labor force participation rate rose. So what happens is you had this giant arc where it was men working, and then women entered the workforce, and the labor force participation rate climbed and climbed. And then starting in 2000, when we started automating away the manufacturing jobs, then the labor force participation rate started declining as essentially men left the workforce.
And that's on its way down further, and a lot of, one of the counters to where we're going with this conversation is the frequent, like, there's going to be more jobs. Is it just like the agricultural revolution?
Or the industrial revolution.
Or the industrial revolution. But the one of the main differences between the two periods is that this is coming after 50% of jobs in total, plus the retraining is not go to a factory for 6 weeks and learn how to retrain.
No.
This is, how do you teach someone to be a creative, adaptive problem solver? In how many years does it take? Is this even possible? Do we need augmented reality, immersive skills? I mean, who's going to do this?
You know, one of the things that's tough is, like, if you get to a point where you can train someone to do this complex job, then you can get to a point where you can get software to do that colors do not. You know, except for rare cases where there is, like, you know, someone where you need human digits to do things. And there are going to be non-repetitive manual jobs with us for a long time. Like cleaning a hotel room makes no sense to automate that, because a human person who goes in can recognize where things need to be and the stains and, like, different things, and it's also
dexterity.
Yeah, and it's also quite cheap. So your incentive to automate that process is very, very low. But you look at something like truck driving, the incentives to automate freight, $168 billion per year to automate freight.
That's huge.
Labor costs, equipment utilization, fewer accidents, fuel. So that's an enormous pot of gold.
Truck drivers and retail employees, all these different people, and you have this list in your book as well, which details this out, but humans have emotions, and you actually experienced an accident as well, and you detailed that out in your book, where you were high on emotion as well. And then we have to sleep, we have hunger.
Yeah, we have a lot of things.
We have humans have all these things. So we can get past a lot of these things by having automation that has just better perception than we do, as well, taking over and saving a lot of lives in the process. There's so many things, but you're literally running on this as a presidential candidate. You're running on everything that you're unpacking here at the table today, and you're inspiring future for people today to start caring about it, and for the future generation to be prepared for this most critical time in humanity.
We are going through the greatest technological and economic transition in human history, and our political class is totally asleep at the switch about it. It's crazy to me. I mean, it's like an elephant in the center of the country just tearing things up and, like, devastating communities and taking whole, like, categories of livelihoods and making them obsolete. And our politicians are like, hey, you know, who knows what's going on? Like, I don't know why that happened.
Adeo Resi was on our show a couple times, Founder Institute, and he calls it the plane. We're all on the plane, and the plane is, the pilots have fallen asleep, and we're just, you know, chilling on the back of the plane, sipping wine, looking out the window. Oh, it's going down. But some of us, our lenses, our visual, we're able to perceive the plane going down. But and so a lot of the people that are perceiving the plane going down are in New York and SF and LA, Seattle, these different metropolitan hubs, where, interestingly enough, you write about it, all these collegiate graduates, people from, and especially from Detroit and Cleveland and Birmingham, these central areas in the US as well, myself included, from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, I've migrated out to these technological hubs. I want to experience the network effect. I want to be around the leading scientists and entrepreneurs, and that's why I'm here. And we're seeing that migration happen, and these people are now saying, hey, look around you. This is the major time that's coming up.
Well, we know it because we're working on it. I have friends who are directly automating away many jobs. They know it. It's in their business plan. They have the line item. They say, we're going to save you this much money. Technology often sees human labor as a flaw to be fixed and done away with and ironed out. So it's the people that are working on it or are closest to the scene who will say, look, guys, this is not going to be some gentle transition. And even if you look at the Industrial Revolution, it had mass riots and violence and popular movements. Labor unions came into existence in 1886. Labor Day was inaugurated because of riots that killed dozens of people and caused billions of dollars of damage. I mean, that's why they have like Labor Day. It's like, oh snap, like, you know, laborers are freaking revolting. Let's give them a holiday. And we instituted universal high school in 1911. So, in large part because of a response to what was happening. So the Industrial Revolution was really, really rough. And this time is going to be much, much worse. According to Bain, it's going to require labor absorption at between 3 and 4 times the rate of the Industrial Revolution.
What does labor absorption mean?
Well, what that means is that you have workers who are losing their jobs who manage to find new jobs. And so the Industrial Revolution, again, massive conflicts and strife. And according to Bain, this time you're going to need to somehow have a reintegration of labor at a much, much higher pace. And if you look at the numbers right now, they're really discouraging because the efficacy rates of government-sponsored retraining are between 0 and 37%, really bad. I mean, 37 is being very, very generous, honestly, because that's just one study said 37% of people trained for this industry went into that industry. And so some of that would have happened without the retraining, presumably. So we're terrible at retraining. And right now, the rates of Americans moving from one state to another for any reason also at a multi-decade low. So you have a labor market that's not dynamic at all. And then you're saying, hey, it's time to have a transition happen at 4 times the rate of the Industrial Revolution. I mean, the odds of that happening magically, painlessly, seamlessly, 0, essentially. Yeah. And our government is, again, asleep at the switch where instead of putting to work massive incentives or really empowering people to be able to adapt, we're just hoping the market figures it out, which it will not.
And you just said it a little bit ago that DC isn't going to just come up and figure it out, that the tech hubs on this East and West Coast are just going to have to be like, yo, we figured it out. Here you go, DC, come and build it in. But let's unpack.
Yeah. I mean, I was in DC.
Campaign. Yeah.
They understand technology not at all.
Not at all.
And if you saw the Zuckerberg hearings, you got that sense.
Yeah,
I mean, you had these senators who were being spoon-fed questions from their staffs, and they were still embarrassing. I mean, and that's the standard of technological awareness.
One of the good ones, though, was, yeah, that's a good point. One of the good ones, though, was when they were like, you know, will you tell us what hotel you stayed at last night? And he was like, no. And it was like, that's our point. So let's unpack the campaign now. So Yang 2020, we got an election coming up, this next election cycle for president of the US. And you got these 3 main pillars, one of them being this freedom dividend, similar to universal basic income. And so there's a value-added tax, and that's the way that this is paid for. And so teach us about the value-added tax, and then teach us about how much people will expect to make, how much they'll expect to earn, and then also what they can do with this money, how it will stimulate the economy, all these interesting things, how much safety it will provide for them.
Oh, sure thing. So the freedom dividend is universal basic income by a different name, just tests better. So we're going with the freedom dividend. Where every American adult between 18 to 64 gets $1,000 a month. Free and clear, you get it, I get it. It doesn't matter if you're working, how much you make, we don't care. You're a citizen, you're an adult, $1,000 a month. Now, the cost of that is about $2 trillion per year. Now, for reference, our economy is now $19 trillion, and it's grown $4 trillion in the last 10 years alone. We are the richest, most advanced society in the history of the world, and we can easily afford $1,000 a month. So the federal budget right now is $4 trillion, so $2 trillion seems like a very big add. But the great thing about it, this is not a government program, it's just circulating money back to citizens so that we can buy things for our children, repair our cars, go to school, start a business, whatever we want to do. So this $2 trillion, the way it's broken up is that we currently spend between $500 and $600 billion on welfare, income support, disability, et cetera.
Current welfare programs are about $500 to $600 billion.
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're going to give everyone $1,000 a month, but they're already getting, let's say, $1,000 in current benefits, then you say, okay, you're already getting it, you're set.
Okay.
And so this $500 to $600 billion decreases the cost of the freedom dividend by about 25%.
Okay, down to $1.5 trillion.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, The big change you have to make is that right now our income tax system is going to be really terrible at generating revenue from AI software machines because they're going to do more and more work, but the beneficiaries tend to be really big tech companies that don't pay a really high tax rate at all.
You wrote in your book that Apple, Microsoft, and Google have tens of billions to hundreds of billions of dollars that they run through offshore accounts.
Yeah, they do. Ireland's a particular favorite. And so they just have all this money parked offshore because they can easily just assign revenue to various places. And so even as the big winners in this AI revolution make more money, it's very unlikely that the US government or society is going to see a lot of that. So what we have to do is we have to adopt a value-added tax, which is something that every other industrialized country in the world has except for us. So it's us modernizing and getting with the program. And because our economy is so large, a value-added tax at half the average European level would generate about 800 billion in revenue.
So Europe's about 20% value-added tax.
Yeah, and so
what does that look like then for like a company like Apple then?
So what would happen is that Apple would be paying a value-added tax at every step of the production process, and then their costs go up by about that amount, total amount.
So about 20% more for a MacBook or an iPhone.
Well, it'd be about 10%, though traditionally companies end up eating some part of that and then passing some of it along to consumers. So it could be that that the price of like the iPad or whatever goes up like 8% or something along those lines. But keep in mind though, you've gotten $1,000 extra a month, and so has everyone else. And so everyone, like the bottom 94% of the US population will end up with an increase in purchasing power.
But then the question then is, if the items are costing more money, if there is that slight inflation of the cost of the items, then how much is that offset this $1,000 a month that I'm making? Yeah, it'll give me the ability to maybe buy it, but then these normal items like food and water and electricity are how much have they went up, and how much does that take away from my 1,000 that I'm earning?
Well, it just depends upon how much you consume, and that's one of the beauties of this system, is that the average American is consuming nowhere close to the threshold where they would lose. Again, the bottom 94% of Americans would see an increase in purchasing power. You need to consume an awful lot in order to have the VAT be more than $1,000 a month. And if you're at that apex of society, then that's great. It's great for you. Even the wealthy people I know, and I do know some wealthy people, they prefer a consumption tax regime to something like a wealth tax or even higher income taxes, because what they'll say is, look, I can control my consumption. I can get a slightly smaller yacht or jet or whatever, but I can't control my wealth. And so if you tax my wealth, it's going to make me really mad. But if you tax my consumption, then I'll be like, yeah, that's fine. And again, every other major industrialized country already has it, some at twice the level. So this is something that people are very, very accustomed to.
So value-added tax taxes consumption, which is why people are more okay with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so value-added tax at half the European level gets you 800 billion. So that plus the 500 billion gets you up to about 1.3 trillion.
Out of the two.
Out of the two.
Yeah.
Now here's the beauty of it, is that if you give people $1,000 a month, they're going to spend it. Right now, 59% of Americans can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. Everyone's really cash-strapped and living paycheck to paycheck. So with an extra $1,000,
us included, support on Patreon.com. The link is below.
Yeah,
Support Yang 2020.
Yeah, I mean, let's do it. It's going to help creatives, artists, entrepreneurs. The Freedom Dividend will be the greatest catalyst to entrepreneurship and creativity in the history of the world. So you put $1,000 a month into people's hands, they're going to spend it, they're going to create things, and it's going to create 4.5 million new jobs and grow the economy by 13% or $2.5 trillion, according to the Roosevelt Institute that modeled this out. So it's going to be this incredible boom, and the US government gets back about 500 billion of that in new revenue, because if the economy booms by 2.5 trillion, of course, the government's going to get its fair share. So that gets you up to 90% of the cost of the Freedom Dividend. And then you get the last couple $100 billion from cost savings to healthcare, incarceration, homelessness services. It gets very expensive when people hit our institutions.
Yeah.
There's one study that showed that if you give a poor family $1, it'll save us $7. So keeping people functional with $1,000 a month actually is going to be this incredible value multiplier. Mental health will improve, graduation rates will rise, nutrition gets better, like all of these things that will be incredible value adds. And you know what goes down? Hospital visits, domestic violence, criminality, like all of these things. So it pays for itself. And what I'm suggesting isn't even aggressive. Like you could say, hey, we're really gonna like create this map, which we will. But even if you're conservative, this thing's very affordable.
You listed out some of these crucial economic measurements that we don't even take into account right now. It's good that you know how you want to pay for this and how to structure it to be paid for. It seems like we've had Zoltan Istvan on the show before talking to us about leasing out
I couldn't believe that was his real name. Like I heard that and I was like, Zoltan Istvan. It's like, wow, he like came up with his own like.
It's like the most popular name in Hungary.
I heard that and then I felt really bad. I felt culturally ignorant because I was like, man, he gave himself like some cool name from the future. But it turns out, but it turns out it's just like
with the transhumanist name.
Yes, that's what I thought. I was like Zoltan, the transhumanist. I was like, that's amazing. Yeah. But it's almost even more amazing that it's just actually a totally normal Hungarian name. Shows what I know.
Well, so you guys both have this thing mapped out. At least like you've started mapping it out, how to pay for it. The value-added tax, what we're saving already with social welfare programs, and then also the economic stimulus that this is going to bring forth. You started listing out these new economic measurements.
Yes.
This is another pillar. And for example, like mental health, we don't really run around trying to analyze how much giving somebody a freedom dividend would help their mental health, how much it would help their nutrition, how much it would decrease their hospital visits, decrease incarceration. And this is expensive stuff to pay for.
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the big problem, and we have a few problems, but like one major problem is that we're guided almost solely by GDP, stock market prices, and profitability. And the issue is that with AI and new technologies, those things are just going to keep on going up and up. Well, not the stock market. I mean, the stock market eventually is not going to stop going up. But GDP is going to keep going up even as more and more Americans get displaced. You know, I mean, if you have like trucks magically drive themselves, that's like a boon to GDP. Because you can get the same work done without having to spend all this money on humans. But is that going to be good for human well-being? In a lot of communities, it's going to be devastating for human well-being. So we need new measurements that actually correspond to human well-being. Things like median income and wealth, levels of engagement with work, mental health and freedom from substance abuse, childhood success rates, environmental quality, proportion of elderly in quality situations. So you can map these things and say, hey, like we need to start driving our economy towards human well-being. We need to make the market serve us as opposed to having us all serve the market. Because if it's us all serving the market, we are going to be screwed. Because the market is going to zero out the truck drivers, it's going to zero out the accountants, it's going to zero out a lot of people upcoming. AI is just now hitting a point where it's going to be able to assume the roles of hundreds of thousands of call center workers and bookkeepers and a lot of other things that we have a lot of people doing right now. So we need to have new measurements for the economy that correspond to our well-being and then start driving in that direction. And the great thing here is that this would free up these corporations to start doing things that help people. Right now, I know CEOs and board members and they say, my hands are tied because I must optimize for one variable. Like
shareholder.
Yeah, quarterly profitability, shareholder value, like which are tied together. So if there's something else, I can maybe get away with it for like one quarter. If things are going really well, I can like do something on the side and be like, it was good PR. So we need to fundamentally change the way that the goalposts are set up if we want to reorient towards an economy that will serve us in what is, again, the greatest technological shift in human history.
Yeah. The realigning of the goalposts is like, right now, this rock is so small, it takes 40 days to sail around this rock. And the geopolitical leadership is kind of overthrowing the we are one mentality. and the prioritization of markets is overthrowing the humanity.
Yes.
And these things being paired together, they're making the goalposts about money and about geopolitical leadership and ownership and control and things like that, which I think a lot of people are racing towards, but at the same time, it's putting a back seat on humanity, putting a back seat on the mentality of shifting the goalposts a little bit towards humanity. What would that do? How would that change the world for us? And you're also working on a digital social credit in that direction as well, which this is another really cool pillar. It acts as kind of you're doing some tokenomics here.
Well, so you have to look at the issues on the ground, because as a startup guy, I'm always like, okay, there's like the stuff in the boardroom and the the whiteboard, and then it's like what's happening on the ground. So what's happening on the ground right now is that, again, more and more American men are leaving the workforce, and men tend to deteriorate without work. I'll include myself because I'm a guy and I resemble this. The first thing we tend to do is play a lot of video games. It's like 75% of this now freed up time goes to video games.
And this is like a lost meaning or purpose in life. So now what do we turn to?
Yeah, if you're just an idle dude, like the progression seems to go by the numbers, because I'm a very data-driven guy. It's a lot of video games, which works well in your 20s, but then you start getting sad in your 30s. And then when you start getting sad in your 30s, you go to drugs, alcohol, self-destructive behavior, occasional violence and criminality, and early death. That's like the general progression without work.
That sounds fucking horrible.
For men, yeah.
Oh, come on. It's not that bad.
Well, this is just data.
There's too many people on the planet.
Well, it's this disintegration that happens. I mean, it's unlikely that it's going to be, just in the privacy of people's homes eventually. I mean, but, so I just want to point out that this is like, by the numbers, this is a different situation for men and women. Idle women do not disintegrate into antisocial behaviors in the same ways. So you have to look at the ground floor and say, okay, hundreds of thousands of former truck drivers who now you're saying, okay, here's some money, but that doesn't solve the problem of what you do all day, because people need structure, fulfillment, purpose, work. So if we say to the market, being like, hey, market, value these people, it's going to be very, very difficult, because the market's like, I don't really need these people, at least the way the monetary market's set up. So what we have to do is, if you have these new goals for the economy, then you can say, you know what? If you nurture a child, volunteer in the community, help your neighbor, give someone a ride, repair a boiler, any of those things that move society's goalposts along, like install solar panels, work on infrastructure, then we're going to reward you.
Time banking.
Time banking, yeah. It's based on a system called time banking that's in effect in a couple hundred communities around the country, where if you do something for someone, then you get a time dollar, and then you can say, hey, I got this time dollar, I can give it to you, and then you have to do something for me, and then someone's like, okay. So you create all these touch points in the economy that are independent of skill level. That it's just like anyone can show up and staff your garage sale or babysit your kid. There are different things that people can do, and then you tokenize those activities, you guarantee it, and as president, I will do this in 2021, you guarantee a monetary value, and you say, look, these tokens have real value. You bring them to a bank, we'll give you $1 for every 10 social credits. But the beauty of it then is that you will tax their redemption, and so people will not redeem it very often. What they'll do is they'll just build social credits, and then they'll use the social credits with each other.
Yep.
They'll go to businesses that will be rewarding positive behavior and want to be seen as hey, we love it when people volunteer in the community. So if you come here, social credits, and then they get your credits and trade it to the government. so there are all these things that can be done. And you can build this parallel economy around pro-social activities that's accessible for people at every point in the skill ladder. That is the vision.
Yeah.
That's where we have to go. Because if we listen to the monetary market for too long,
they're not going to value these things like volunteering. They're not going to value taking care of kids, taking care of elderly.
My wife right now is home with our 2 boys who are 5 and 2. She works harder than I do. And the market value of her work is zero.
Zero. Yeah. And well, I guess technically, if you had to hire somebody else to take care of your 2 kids during that time, the market value of that would be 30, 50 bucks an hour or whatever for 2 kids.
Yeah, I mean, you can get nannies and whatnot, though. You know, there is a difference.
Oh, it's like a parent. It's a yeah.
Yeah, and you know, there are many things too that are similar. Like if you and if you look at the way like the market values, for example, home health care aides, like taking care of your aging parent, you'd be like, oh, I can pay someone to do that. Right now, the market rate for that is $22,000 a year, and there's a turnover of 100%. Like pretty much no one wants to do that job of taking care of the elderly, because we remunerated at very, very low levels.
Yeah.
And so what's happening in a lot of these contexts is you look at it, and the market tries to seek like the lowest price point that it can get away with, because but that causes its own set of problems and friction. So the goal for us has to be to invigorate some of these activities for a couple of reasons. One, we need them because our society is disintegrating. Like as we're sitting here, labor force participation down. Our life expectancy has declined for the last 2 years because of a surge in suicides and drug overdoses, where 7 Americans are dying of opiates every hour.
This mental health shit's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's going to get worse if we don't figure out the automation.
Yes, it is all tied together.
Yes, yes.
Where you have Americans getting pushed into this mindset of scarcity, where they don't have the bandwidth to process things rationally, and then they become more impulsive, they make lesser decisions, they get angrier and more like, xenophobic and the rest of it. I mean, if this sounds familiar, this is exactly what we're going through right now. This is a giant automation story. And so we have to start owning the problem and then have real solutions that are going to be massive. That's the generational challenge. But that's why I'm running for president, to galvanize energy around real solutions instead of the garbage stopgaps that are being presented.
You've laid it out pretty well, and it's going to require more than you to get it done. What are the first 2020, how do you actually put it into legislation and get it rolling?
Well, certainly the biggest thing we can do is the freedom dividend, where you, me, Ron, everyone else gets $1,000 a month. And I'm happy to say that's actually very, very doable. All you need is a majority of Congress. There's a wave, I become president, there's a Democratic Congress. There'll be a real appetite for this because people will start accepting that that this is not like it was before, and like it's not like new jobs are just going to magically appear that pay people a certain amount. So, so the path is very clear. I just need to win and become president, and the campaign grows every day because Americans are waking up. But certainly, if anyone wants to help with that, the website is yang2020.com. You can just Google my name, Andrew Yang. I'm very glad to say we get contributions from around the country because people know that that this time is different and we need to get our acts together very, very fast.
And it's good that you're getting donations from a lot of these retail or truck driving, these jobs that's good that people are seeing that and recognizing it. And it's also crazy that the same people that got their manufacturing jobs taken away, that there was that Donald Trump was able to figure out how to talk to them and get them to vote for him because he wanted to bring those back. And the more, I guess, sensical idea is to be like, let robots do those jobs and let's retrain you. Let's give you freedom dividends. Let's talk about social credits. Let's do this in a different way. So then you got a lot of work ahead of you in Iowa and New Hampshire. So this is a way for you to become a top candidate in the Democratic Party, and therefore have your messages communicated on the larger stages on your way to getting elected.
Yeah, so support from around the country, where we need to get our national polling numbers up to a certain range in order for me to be on the big stage of the debates. And the early states count extra, so it's Iowa and New Hampshire, and then South Carolina, Nevada, and then California is number 5. So
that's a 15-minute timer. Thank you, Ronnie.
So fun, nice hourglass.
Yeah, 15-minute glass.
Oh, it's fun. That goes 15 minutes. That makes sense.
Yeah, because I
used to call it a
quarter glass. Yeah. I used to call it an hourglass too.
So we need people in the early states to get energized, but we need people around the country. We need people to spread the word to their friends and say, look, we need bigger solutions. We need the freedom dividend. We need to value humanity. We need to build a new economy that puts human goals and values first, as opposed to treating us all like economic inputs and doing the machine. Because over time, the economic inputs model is going to break down. It's breaking down right now.
It's breaking down right now. People aren't being valued. Yeah, go ahead, Ron.
Well, I think that that's the thing. You know, these are fantastic ideas, but this whole system has to break down before we can implement them. No one's going to say, "Yeah, let's do it," until they're forced to do it. People hang on to what they have. They don't want anybody to take it away from them, and they don't want to share. They don't want to volunteer. You know, this is just what I see in my 51 years. You know, you talk about humanity, having value on humanity. People don't even respect themselves.
You know, there's a lot of truth and substance to what you're saying, because America historically has needed the crisis to respond. And the thing that I would say that gives me optimism is that this is like the opposite of climate change in terms of what you ask of people. It's like when there's climate change, you're like, hey, this is going to be really bad, so like do all these things for me, and we're going to like have to regulate things and cause friction, and you know that's life. And then people are like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. But on this one, it's like, look, existential level threat coming, AI, software, machines, robots. And so the solution is, I want to give you $1,000. It's not like, and I'm going to take something away from you. It's like, and I want to give you money.
Yeah.
And then people will be like, huh, I'm not sure if the Asian man is right about the robots and software, but I'd like money. So it's like the opposite of like the asking people to make a sacrifice. It's like, and we need to treat you better because like big transition's coming, and let's start treating people like humans. And this policy passed the House of Representatives in 1971 under Richard Nixon.
This was interesting when you talked
Yeah,
about this.
Martin Luther King was for it. Milton Friedman was for it. It became this close to being law, and it stumbled in the Senate because the Democrats wanted a higher income threshold. It's been in effect in Alaska for 36 years under a Republican governor, and is wildly popular. It's improved children's nutrition. It's created thousands of jobs. It's made income inequality go down. So like, this is not out of the realm of possibility at all. Like 1,000 economists signed a letter saying this would be great for the economy in 1970. And it's been in effect in one state. It's just a state that none of us pays attention to because it's really cold and a little far away. But it's a Republican state, and they're a massive libertarian and conservative support for this because there's something very, very deeply conservative about the freedom dividend. It's like, look, don't give the government the money so they can do whatever it's going to do. Give you the money, give you the money, give me the money, and then we will decide what to do because we are the owners and shareholders of this society. Mm-hmm. The same way a company declares a dividend, we're all like genius, like good management.
Yeah.
This country can declare a dividend for us, and it can easily afford it.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Did I turn you around, Ron?
Because one question, one answer just raises another question. It's tough. I just don't feel that humans at this stage of the game are. It's the big catastrophe has to happen before anything gets done. These are just all visions of the future. Yes, we are going to get there. We are going to achieve these things, but billions of people need to die. Period.
Well, it's very dark, man, and that's
the truth. The universe space is dark.
And that's exactly what we have to try and prevent and preempt. Because to me, this revolution happens either the good way or the bad way. And the bad way may be irreversible. Like, it's one of the things that frustrates me about some people in this conversation, where some people say universal basic income is inevitable, but we shouldn't be doing it right now because of whatever. And then I'm like, look, if it's inevitable, you can't time it perfectly by some unknown standard. If you go too early, what is the downside? You get more time to adjust, you get to build new institutions, like people can adapt. If you go too late, it might be catastrophic. Like, it's not like after the great trucking riots of 2026, then you're like, oh, like, here's universal basic income, and then all the truckers go home happy. You know what I mean? It's like, you have to try and make the big moves to ease the transition, because it's not like communities or individuals or families just magically reintegrate. Like right now there's a disintegration happening, and it's very, very clear by the numbers. Again, surging suicides, 7 Americans dying of opiates every hour, more Americans on disability than work in construction. Like you can like record low numbers of businesses being started, people getting married, people moving, having children. Pretty much any positive act of optimism is at a record or historic low. I mean, our shit is coming apart. And so the question is, like, whether we can come together and say, hey, let's have like a meaningful response to this, or like you're saying, we get there the bad way. But if we get there the bad way, there's probably no coming back. Like the institutions need to come together quickly. And on this one too, it's like I'm suggesting something that's just gonna make most everyone's lives better. Like people say, like, what's life gonna be like after universal basic income? Like now, just less miserable. You know what I mean? It's like we can't put that together. So I'm very optimistic because it's going to help people, and you know, you get enough people activated around that, you can win.
Well, you almost can't be pessimistic because you wouldn't get the election, and you know that's a real thing today in today's day and age. You can't be pessimistic. You won't win the election. This is you teaching about Venture for America to Obama in 2012. Stimulating entrepreneurship, explaining the importance of the center set of jobs.
But during,
you know,
sorry.
Yeah, it's all good,
no problem.
So
I was talking sense. Barack was very, very interested. He was like, "Tell me more, tell me more." Yeah. And I've actually spent a bit of time with him because I was appointed to a couple of different like presidential engagements. It was it's a great.
Good.
It was great fun. I got to introduce my wife to him at the White House. Like my in-laws liked me more for about a month.
For about a month.
Yeah. And then, my in-laws are, my in-laws are into it now.
They're into it now. Yeah. It takes a little while. Yeah. So, I asked you this earlier, and I think it's still important. There's like Scandinavia's going on. They're doing tests with universal basic income. Different parts of the world are exploring what it would be like. Different parts of the world are exploring other things like sesame credit in China or genetic engineering without regulation. So people are kind of tweaking around with things. Ron was pointing at this earlier, just this idea of maybe it is totally fine. We are talking about prioritizing humanity over the markets and putting UBI in early and saving people's lives and and their livelihoods. And then this alternative's like, well, what happens? Aren't we fighting against evolution, the survival of the fittest right now? There are these groups of people on the planet that have accumulated so much wealth. They have made so much impact, and the other ones might not have. And it's a roll of the dice for you to be born in a place that has just less socioeconomic status than another. And so is it then, it's just a fucking roll of the dice. So is it our responsibility, is it the responsibility of high SES to figure out how to funnel money through things like this value-added tax and universal basic income and figure that out? Or should they just speciate and go like, I'll be in the poor class and I just won't be able to keep up, right? And just like go speciate, go colonize the cosmos. And maybe your kids and their kids and whatnot, maybe we'll just leave it behind.
I know people that have that point of view. And to me, the whole thing is just so dumb because, like, let's say I'm a rich person in San Francisco. Do I really think that society can disintegrate and that like my life will be just as like easy and happy and frictionless as it is now? Like, of course not. Like, if I have to hire bodyguards and get a bulletproof car and like take my kids out of school and get like a bunker somewhere and like I have to redecorate the bunker.
That sounds miserable. That sounds miserable.
I mean, and like have to live with like constant anxiety and fear because studies have shown that people who are at the top of unequal societies are less happy than people who are at the top of more equal societies. So to me, it's just like enlightened self-interest to be like, look, let's try and keep society whole. And it's not like the survival of the fittest thing. I mean, like, it's not like people stop having kids by the numbers. I mean, right now as we're sitting here, 40% of American children are born to a single or an unmarried mother.
It's so bad.
And it's not good. and so, but it just goes to show that it's not like all of a sudden there's like a total curtailment of like reproduction. I mean, that's not the case, So but there is something very fundamental there, which is like if you follow just like the economic rationale being like I'm worth $1 billion, like you're worth 0, then you wind up in very, very dark dystopian realities very, very quickly.
Yeah, and as much as we can talk about the utopia and the dystopia, I think that many people would rather push towards, like you said, enlightened self-interest of pushing towards more of being at the top of a higher baseline for everybody and just being at the top, more inclusive.
Yeah, there's like the humanist moralist thing. It's like the right thing to do. It's moral, like I'm still a human being and an American and a parent and like the rest of it. And then there's just the practical. It's like riots are bad. Yeah. Like, you know, like private security forces. Literally, there's one person.
Riots are not bad. They will try to get away with whatever they can as long as people are satisfied. But the fact of the matter is there's a lot of people that are waking up. You talked about people waking up. They know that the game is rigged. There's something behind this that's not going to change until people start dying, until people get bashed in their skulls with metal pipes.
Yeah, so that's the thing to avoid, that vision.
Not at all. Bring that shit on.
Well,
as soon as we can.
Yeah, so anyone listening to this would be like, hey, exactly. It's like, oh, snap. Even the guy behind the camera wants to bash someone's skull.
No, not me. Not at all. I'm not going to do that. I'm a pacifist. I love. Yeah. I'm a lover, but not a fighter. You know what I mean? But I'm well aware.
There are visions that are being painted out, and Ron's vision is that there is a metal pipe that could come smashing into someone's head because they're rioting because they don't have access to food or water or work or anything that they need. And like you said,
or they're getting lied to, and they're getting cheated, and they're being deceived. It's a terrible game.
And that is the case where society is more fragile than many people would like to believe. And the people at the top, again, you can have the humanist, like, benign motivation, which I'm glad to say there are people that really do have that in their hearts. But then there's even like just the enlightened self-interest being like, look, this is a much better way for me to go. There was actually a guy who was like trying to pay a consultant to be like, hey, if everything goes bad, how do I make sure my security forces don't turn on me in the bunker? Because at that point, like, you know, like how do I know? Like, what's like? So that's the kind of eventuality that people are literally playing out. It's much, much better for us to come together.
Yeah, than to go apart like that.
Yeah, than to wind up in the bunker being like, how do I know my security guy's not going to like shoot me in the head? So
yeah, how do I know that the cyber attack that's happening on the robotic bodyguards is not from a different person that's trying to kill me either? There's so much to unpack in the utopia. Like you're right. It seems as though the right direction is this direction, but then the further is like, how do we get there? And you know, you have laid out some plans for us to get there. I want to ask you a couple of questions on the way out that we ask our guests.
Sure.
What do you think we're alone in the cosmos?
It's highly unlikely to me that we're alone in the cosmos. There's certainly life someplace else. You know, the question is whether that life is like the flying saucer type life where it's gonna like fly over, but there's life someplace else.
Yeah, and they're paying very close attention to this conversation we're having right here.
Which is why the live stream
that's
out and now we have to stitch this video together.
I will say though that this campaign is our chance to advance the species, because if you imagine us implementing this here in the United States, it would follow suit in many other countries who right now see us as backward. So this campaign can advance the species.
Yeah, I do think that efforts like what we're discussing right now, these sort of collective movements can progress humanity to hopefully get past these Fermi filters that prevent civilizations from flourishing in the cosmos.
Yes, all right, so that's one. Yes, there's life someplace else. There almost have to be.
Do you think that this is a simulation?
I guess I saw that from the topic. Oh my gosh. I don't think this is a simulation.
Why?
I don't. Because that's a good question. Because I haven't seen, like, I know there was like this argument that it is a simulation. Here's the data. But I just feel like
you are a numbers man.
I am a numbers man, and it is a possibility. I would not dismiss the possibility it's a simulation. At a hand, I would not. And I also am. There are times when it does feel like you're walking in like steps that have been, like, laid out in front of you in the sand. I mean, there's like sometimes that sense, but I still believe it's us, and we're doing it, and we're choosing it, and we're making it happen.
You believe in free will?
You know, yeah, I do believe in free will to a point. Like I do think it's not that that many of the virtues that we praise in people, it's like, oh, that's just like, you know, because certainly to the extent I'm capable of anything, like there are a lot of things that went into it in terms of my parentage, and you know, it's like, so even the things where I think I'm choosing, like there are probably a lot of things that you know, were just my wiring, or the fact that, you know, my dad like pushed me in a certain way or whatever it is.
And then what do you think is the most beautiful thing in the world, Andrew?
You know, I mean, this is going to sound cheesy, but I am a dad, and I do get a thrill when either of my sons like hugs me, or like jumps on my back, or, you know, like looks me in the eyes. And, you know, anyone who's a parent, like if you have that situation, I will say that one of the main reasons I'm running for president is that I became a parent, you know, almost 6 years ago now. And that process led me to see just how rough it is for most people under most circumstances to be a parent. And, you know, in my mind, I was cocky. I was like, whatever. I'm like, you know, like educated. I have some resources. Like, you know, we're married. Like, this is going to be a breeze. Like, freaking, you know, people with much, much less have kids and they figure it out or whatever. And then when we had kids, I was like, oh my gosh. It's like, anyone who has kids can relate to this. But I got exposed to the world of like dependence and weakness and friction in a way that just made me much more, I think, cognizant of what most people are experiencing. And like it's real, and it'll destroy many, many families and people.
I like how you reference the moments in time when your kids are jumping on your back or looking at you in your eyes, and that being so beautiful. And I like how you're also referencing this deeper sense of empathy for other people in less fortunate rolls of the dice, because when we do build that deeper sense of empathy, it does prioritize humanity over markets. It does prioritize doing things like universal basic income for the world, and figuring out how to economically prosper through the greatest and even spiritually prosper through through the greatest technological shift that humanity is facing right now. So, Andrew Yang, what a freaking pleasure.
Thanks, Alan. It's been great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
No problem.
Please do check out yang2020.com. Definitely give that a check. Also, the new book, The War on Normal People. Please check that out as well. Take a look at that. Join us in the conversation, guys. Think about it. Go and talk to 2 other people about it. Talk about the freedom dividend. Go and have more conversation about it. Go and check out more information on yang2020.com. Join us, comment below with your thoughts. We'd love to continue building the community. Subscribe. Also, consider joining us on Patreon so we continue growing this, impacting more people with it. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and let's build a beautiful future together. Much love.